today's new space is maybe tomorrow's old space. So to discuss today's new space, I have an interesting panel with 4 panelists in various fields. So that let's try to focus on the new space side. Mr. Ulrich Scheib from Rocket Factory Augsburg, who is making the first presentation, I think, for the RFA ever. We have Benoit Deper from already Aerospace Lab, okay, who is in the field of Earth observation. We have David Henri from Exotrail in the propulsion, and we have, shall I present him, Jean-Jacques Dordain, former DG of ESA, and today, among many other positions, advisor of the board for SpaceResources.lu. So, I'd like that each of you present shortly his field, his business, and why are they relevant to new space? Is it a matter of structure, a matter of technology, a matter of financing? Who wants to start?
Oui, bonjour. So what is clear is that I am not new. That this is the first point. Number 2, and it was clear in the address of the ministers, by far it's not only space which is new. I think that all industrial activities and economic activities are new. So space is just one of the activities which are renewed. I think that, as you said, the only certitude when you are new is that you will become old. That this is, and I have the experience of that. So not only space is new. Number 3, speaking of Luxembourg, because I am here to speak of the initiative of the Luxembourg on space resource. Yes, this is new, at least on 2 aspects. First, the topic, because yes, I know that using space resources is something which we are speaking since long, but this is the first time in Europe that a country has decided to embark on exploiting space resources and putting in place a framework to implement it. So the topic and also the approach. This is, let's say, I have known for some time the space where government, they were telling industry what to do and how to do. The approach is in Luxembourg very different. They are not paying for a project that they want. They just put in place a legal framework, financial framework, a research framework, and they try to attract entrepreneurs. So it's a totally different approach. And this is, in my view, the 2 very new aspects of the initiative taken by Luxembourg.
Thanks, Jean-Jacques. So first, a small words about Exotrail. So we are a startup. We are about 20 people in Paris region and in Toulouse. We are designing electric propulsion systems for small satellites to allow them to change orbit after launch, and thereby optimize their performances, optimize the launch strategy, and avoid space pollution. And we're also designing a constellation mission optimization software to optimize the use of propulsion. So why are we part of a new space? Because we are advised by Jean-Jacques, so that's a criteria to be a new space European startup now. And no, I'm not a big fan either of the word new space, because you can pack so many things behind that it's lose a bit the substance. I think that one of the main differences is that we are probably more able compared to larger companies to take risks, or let's say to analyze whether risk should be taken or not, and once this analysis has been done, we are able to go and take the risk, which allow us to go quicker than larger companies in some cases. So some of the things that we've done in the past, probably the decision to make it was due to the fact that we are small and that we are able to take risk. And one of the reasons that we are able to take risk is that we need to go quickly, given also the way we are funded. So that's something else that is new, is that more and more ventures are being funded by venture capital in space, which is new. And this gives a time scale to the projects in terms of return on investment for this venture capital that we have to go fast, and because of that we have to take risks. And another thing is the way space sometimes works is that you have a customer that has a set of very, very precise requirements. And what you design is sometimes a piece of jewelry to meet these very specific exact requirements. And the way that we work, and that a lot of new space startup work, is that you have a set of general requirements that you infer from the market, and to size the products that you are building, you are using these general requirements, but you are also taking as an input what is available out there. What is available in the space industry, in non-space industry, in the automotive sector, in the drone sector, and so on. And based on that available technologies and those general requirements, using both of this, you size precise requirements, and then you work on that. And this allows us to reduce the costs and reduce the lead time and scale more easily what we are doing. So I would say that these are the things that makes this industry new in a sense.
Thank you. So thank you, David, for explaining a lot of the points I was going to explain anyway, but I share most of the definition of new space that you just... Yes. So I was thanking David for explaining a vision of new space that I share for most of what he said. I would add on top of that venture capital is really like the key differentiator compared to old space companies that are usually privatization of public companies that were built in the past in a very different ecosystem for very different needs. And I would add on top of that we are focusing on building systems fast and in a way that they are good enough to deliver the performances required by the market, but nothing more, because we want to be cost effective because of the nature of the funding we got. So that's a bit my definition of the new space.
Good morning also from my side, Ulrich Scheib. I'm here to present Rocket Factory. Rocket Factory, new company created in August last year to provide cost-efficient, reliable access to space. Our main objective is to become the enabler to allow for the new business models that are coming from the new technologies in the satellite business, while satellites becoming smaller, cheaper, and more performant, the right access to leave the bottleneck which has happened in the past, abandon, so in order to allow this new business model actually to happen. So this is where Rocket Factory, the main motivation which comes in. We are a company, an independent company of the OHB Group. We are based in Augsburg, Germany. Today we have 32 people coming from 14 different countries who joined explicitly for this project. This is important to understand. OHB has worked on the idea of how to optimize access to space for a very long time. And last year, after a successful ESA study, we convinced the owners to create this new company. What is new about new space? And I can only share the same view. New space is something everyone can think about. But what is really important is to create value for the customer. And where do you create value to the customer is to enable him to perform his business model, to realize his business case. And this is where low-cost access to space, reliable, frequent access to space comes into play. And this is where we focus on, and this is where we see that there's a market which is now opening up.
Thank you. Well, after all that you've said, I see now all you four of you as enablers. It's the key word. I'd like to know, for each of you, how do you expect to become relevant to your specific sector? Where is your niche, your sweet spot? And how does this cope with the venture capital that is supporting you? Well, not maybe not for Luxembourg, but for the other three.
So what we are doing is propulsion, so electric propulsion. We think that we are gradually moving from a first period of time in the new space to a second one. The first one was the realm of demonstrations for business cases, for technical demonstrations, for Earth observation, telecommunication, and the use of constellations. So companies that had money to send a few satellites in space to test things. And that some of them, not all of them, some of them will eventually launch and operate their constellations. And when we talk about constellations, we are absolutely certain that you need propulsion for several things. You need propulsion to first to optimize your launch scenario. So today you have essentially two choices to reach space. The first one is you use rideshare or piggyback, and that's a bit the equivalent of the bus or the carpooling. So everyone is going at the same place, not really exactly where you want, and everyone together, but at the same place for fairly low cost. And the second one is dedicated launches, where you go where you want, but with a much higher cost, and that's a bit the equivalent of the taxi. And the propulsion adds a third way to essentially use the bus and then take a cheap ride to where you want to be. So it's a way to optimize your launch scenario in the sense that you can reduce your launch costs and still be able to go where you need to be. It's also a way to deploy constellations, and that's really hard, if not impossible in most cases, without propulsion. And it's a way to mitigate space pollution by safely re-entering in the atmosphere after your mission. And in that, so we have several companies doing propulsion. We have several differentiators versus them, and I will maybe deal a bit later on that. Essentially, it's going quicker. So higher thrust means you go quicker, and you go quicker to your destination. So you minimize the period of time during which you do not generate revenue. So that's the main differentiator. And in terms of venture capital, so it's interesting and a bit related to what I was saying in the point before, is that because we are funded by venture capital, it makes the time scale, like we can't reach profitability in 20 years. So the idea is the way we build a company, the way we build our business case is to be able, in a reasonable time frame, so in the next years, to reach a point where we are profitable. And to do that, we need to address the constellation market. But so far, it's not incompatible. So that's, I think, new as well, is that you can design, build ventures that are compatible in terms of timescale and return on investment with venture capitals.
Just to complement this, do you have, well, a deadline from your supporters?
So some of them are in the room, so maybe you can ask them. We do have a deadline, but it's not, let's say, any venture capital will want, and in that sector, a return on investment on 5 to 7 years. And ours have invested 1 year ago, so that gives you a sort of deadline, sort of. But any venture, anywhere, funded by regular VCs, will have to design a company, build a company, and essentially create values based on the money that they have injected to be able to multiply that value by 5 or 10 or more in the next 5 to 7 years in space or in other field. And that's, I think, what is quite new.
All right. So at Aerospace Lab, we are building small satellites for Earth observation and then some data processing to get the data out of it. So there was a lot of activity in that field in the few past years. A lot of stuff has been said. People feel that the market may be saturated. But when you look closer, you can see that there's a lot of competitors on PowerPoint. Some of them raise a bit of money. And a few of them launched actual satellite in space. So we have a few great competitors, almost exclusively based in the US. But there is a large gap in Europe and basically the rest of the world. So the main differentiator is that we would like to address some markets that are not addressed yet by our competitors, and then learn from their implementation strategy to have maybe products that are more dedicated to several niche, basically a combination of bands in the remote sensing world. So we are flying instruments that were never flown before and that are providing data that is not used yet. So with this new kind of data, we are willing to open new applications that are not only using the usual RGB images that you can find on the marketplace. So that is one of the main differentiators regarding our competitors. And then VC-wise, everything has been said already. So they have investment, ROE, target dates. There is a kind of a soft deadline, so there is no contractual deadlines, but there is an increasing pressure that we may feel in the future from the VCs. But right now we are in the implementation phase, so we are focusing on the implementation and not looking too much to that deadline yet.
If you see where the main differentiators, it is clear rockets have been launched now for a very long period of time. So in order to differentiate, you need to bring added value to the customer. And where's the added value? The added value comes from reliability, but we believe it is very clearly on cost and to support the business case of your customer. And how can we do this? Of course, we can offer a cost-efficient product on a very reliable, frequent launch basis. However, we also believe, and this is our concept, to not only offer access to space, service to space, but also service in space, which will allow to optimize the business case of the customers. And here we clearly see that there's a difference to be made. If we speak about the pricing, the objective must be that a price that we pay today for rideshare in the future will be the price target for a dedicated launch. This is very clear. So this is the objective that we need to give ourselves, and this is what we are working on.
Yes, on the utilization of space resources, I think that there are three main remarks that I wish to make. First of all, a lot of things have changed in space. I think that the satellites are smaller, the performance are higher, the number of data collected and distributed is booming, and so on and so on. But speaking of enablers, as you said, there are still three main obstacles to exploit fully space. Number one, it's transportation. A lot of things have changed, but transportation, we are still using and bringing every kilogram of hardware, every liter of liquid from planet Earth, and this is certainly not the best way to go to space. The second obstacle is energy. We use solar energy, which is fantastic, it's infinite, but unfortunately it forces us to work in the sun. And maybe the best is in the shadow. And we have also to solve this problem of energy, production of energy. And the third is life support. Let's say astronauts are interesting payload, but they are very heavy payload. because even if they are very small and thin, they have to bring with them the food, the drinks, and the oxygen that they need in space. So life support is also a serious restriction in the exploitation of space for humans. And the use of space resource can bring a lot and even create a rupture in removing these three obstacles. That is number one. The first thing which will be changed in space is what space resources will bring will be mostly to change the way we are using space. Number two, this is the approach, as we said. And the approach is totally different because it makes of space a business as usual. This is an approach where there are customers, investors, and entrepreneurs. And governments, they can be customers, but this is an ecosystem which is, again, business as usual. And I have attended the first meeting of the Space Finance Lab organized by the European Investment Bank in Luxembourg, because it was in Luxembourg. And I was amazed by the discussion among, again, customers, investors, and entrepreneurs. And I think that this type of circle makes of space just a normal business, which was not true until now. The third, it's which are the hurdles, because all what I've said can look nice. The first hurdle is the resistance to movement. You know that I have been a professor of mechanics for long, and I have always said that resistance is a very positive signal, because it means that there is movement. If there is no resistance, there is no movement. So, and you can even measure the movement by the level of resistance. And when let's say, when I see the resistance to the movement, I can say, yes, there is a movement in space. So that it's number one. Number two, I am not a civil engineer, and I have never designed any walls and bridges, but obviously it's much easier to build walls than to build bridges. And we have to create these bridges between the space sector and the non-space sector. As I said many times to the government of Luxembourg, space resources is much more a question of resources than a question of space. And we have to make sure that the resource industry is interested by space resources. So we have to build bridges, bridges among different industrial sectors, bridges between customers, investors who were not used to look at space. I can tell you that among the investors that I have met in the Space Finance Lab, very few of them were even knowing that they could invest in space. And because space has still the reputation to be very expensive. This is not me who is saying that, it's Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos has, in an interview, said a sentence which has opened my eyes. He said, I have always been interested by space, and only space is my interest. But before investing in space, I had to become rich, and I have created Amazon. So just to say that when you read that, you understand that for investors to invest in space, there is still some bridges to make.
Well, the big problem I see for your business is a problem of time scale, because we've been talking about return on investment on a short scale. Today there are 2 probes orbiting, circling around near-Earth asteroids. They will bring several grams or maybe kilograms of samples. Missions last something like 7 years. It will be something like 500,000 to 8 million a gram. So, space resources is not something for tomorrow, it's for the day after. How will you be appealing and new to investors for such a long time?
You are too pessimistic, and this morning the introduction from the director of the La Tribune, he said, I am optimistic. So I am optimistic. Because what you said is right. And it's not new. Let's say 69, we are celebrating the Apollo program this year, and at the time of the Apollo program, to bring back 300 kilos, which include the 3 astronauts, 300 kilos from the moon, you had to launch 1,000 tons from planet Earth. So the ratio, the business case, you cannot make a business case out of kilograms only, but it gives you 300 kilos for 1,000 tons. And this is my argument, is that, yes, bringing back grams to planet Earth costs a lot, if you include the cost of the, but this is true also the other way around. You are speaking of mass from space to planet Earth. But let's look at the mass from planet Earth to space. And today, again, bringing every kilogram of hardware, every liter of liquid from planet Earth is the worst way to go to space. 1 liter of oxygen in the geostationary orbit of planet Earth is 3 times less energy if that liter of oxygen is coming from the moon compared to the same liter of oxygen coming from planet Earth. You spend much less energy if you bring and making the first liter of oxygen from the regolith of the moon. Okay, yes, it's not easy, but it's at reach. NASA is already making a lot of demonstration on ground to see how they can extract oxygen from silice, and they are doing that in Hawaii. Okay, the technology is already under demonstration. So after that, let's make it. What we are missing today is the first liter of oxygen produced from the moon. Because I can tell you that the day someone will say, I have made the first liter of oxygen from the regolith of the moon, it will change totally the way we are going to space. This is what I have explained to my grandchildren, because they are asking me, why are you looking at space resources? I said, very simple, guys. Your father is taking you in Normandy from Paris. If he had to take in his car all the kilograms that you are eating during a weekend, all the fuel that he needs to go and to come back, and so on, frankly speaking, he will not go very far for very long. This is the way we are going to space.
Okay, we will move to shorter time scales. For ExoTrail, what is your time scale for going to space, being let's say producing on an industrial basis, and how do you differentiate from the other space propulsion ventures, because there are many in France. I don't know if it's the same in other countries, but in France there are many ventures that are proposing electric propulsion for small satellites.
So in terms of competition, so we have several competitors in France and in the world, which can be seen also as a good sign that there is a market for these companies, not for all of these companies. So we have two ways essentially, so a lot, but let's put that in 2 ways we are differentiating versus them. The first thing is that we're not selling a product, we are selling mission. So what we are selling essentially is an access to an orbit at a given cost, at a given time. To do that, you need to optimize your mission, and we're designing the tools to do this, which we are the only one to do. And then we deliver the system. So the offer is complete. Let's say it's not purely hardware, but it's a global service. And the second thing is that due to the technology that we are using, we have the system itself has a much higher thrust than other competitors. So it means that if you use solar energy from the solar panels of the spacecraft that you store in your battery, and then you put kilowatt hours watt-hours of energy into the propulsion system that converts that energy into speed, essentially. And the ratio at which we do that is much higher than our competitors. And what that means is that propulsion is needed to go from point A to point B. Point A is the launch orbit, sorry, and point B is where you start generating revenues. And the reason and the consequence of us having a thrust that is 3 to 5 times higher than our competitors is that from A to B, you don't generate revenue because you use all your power to move. And once you're at point B, you use your power to generate revenue. And because we go quicker, we have a higher thrust, the duration that you need to go from point A to point B is divided by 3, 4, 5. So that's the main difference. There are a few others in terms of how easy we integrate in the mission and the system. And with some of our competitors, we are actually quite complementary. So in some missions, for instance, you need a really compact form factor to be able to stay a very long time in your orbit. And we identify where we are complementary. And where we are complementary, we also discuss with some of our competitors to see what could be done. So we build who we are now because we manage to partners with the people that has the expertise and the skills that's complemented where we were good at. And that's something also that with some the competitors we have discussion because we think that in some realms we could be partners. So that's the first thing. And your second thing was, I forgot. Timetable. So we are, sorry, a lot of things to do. If we are reaching space, it should be this year. So we are delivering our first demonstrator in the next few months. We have several other missions planned in the next years, one in 2021, a few in 2020. So the idea is, and you're right, is once you designing something that works on the ground is not easy, but it's a first step, and then the second step is having it in space and working for a long time. And that's essentially the next steps now. So it's delivering this flight model, demonstrating our product. There is some risk involved, but that's really something that we will do this year. And also is really qualifying our products on the ground so that we can next year, so in about the middle of 2020, deliver our first fully qualified products. And when I say fully qualified, it's in terms of lifespan. You tell to your customers, okay, this works for 1,000 hours. You need to guarantee that it works for 1,000 hours. And that's what we are doing right now. So in space this year and qualified next year. Question.
Yes, Mr. Deper, same question regarding timetable. And well, I've met many companies that are providing imagery without launching any satellite because they consider that the offer is already plethoric. How do you plan to differentiate from them?
All right. So, first of all, I will not be so optimistic about the offer regarding imagery. When we look at the commercial offering right now, it didn't change much since 10 years. So a couple of new players are there, but if you look at the whole market volume and the number of players and the price per square kilometer per type of data, it didn't change much. So there is a feeling and a trend that it seems obvious that many data are there and available, but when you look closer, you are not able to find them at a good price yet. So we are still in the upward trend in terms of satellite data offering, and to do the comparison with the companies that dedicated their whole manpower to processing the data, making the assumption that the commercial data will be available. We wanted since day one to keep our own space infrastructure in place. to get responsiveness into the access of the data. So the market were evolving within military intelligence, commodity trading, and so on. They would like to have like near real-time images, and if you have to go through a supplier for the data, it's not as lean as if you are operating your own constellation. So this is the first one. And then the second one is that sometimes when you do only data processing, you may have issues of independence. Getting the right data at the right time may just not be possible because you are one of the data processors out there, but there is so much power in the people having access to the raw data that we wanted to have our own space infrastructure.
And timetable?
Timetable. So we are focusing on what I said before, data processing and satellite that will provide imagery. On the hardware side, so the satellite side, we have our first launch end of this year. So we are right in the middle of integrating the satellite in our premises near Brussels. Then after that, we have an incremental roadmap with 4 more prototypes to be launched 1 per quarter roughly after the first one. So by the end of 2020, beginning of 2021, we will launch our first satellite that will bring revenues.
And do you need to raise more money?
Obviously, we are in the space hardware business, so it was planned since the beginning. So we did our first seed round end of 2017, A series in November last year, and we are slowly but surely going towards a B round of funding to be closed before the end of next year.
Okay. Mr. Scheib, you arrive with a new launcher in a quite crowded business, even in Europe, because, well, I've met people from Orbex, from PLD in Spain, and you are, even in Germany, there is another project with Brazil supported by the DLR. How do you fit in this crowded area, and will you need to raise money except from OHB and MT Aerospace?
First of all, let's say competition, and this is what we heard, and this is what New Space is all about. Competition is good. Competition, where competition is, there's innovation, and we get agility into the market. If you have no competition, you get slow, and things are not moving forward. So we accept this competition, and we like this environment because this creates also an environment, also creating new ideas into the market. The question is, and this is what behind your question, why are we convinced that we will make the difference, that we will be successful? And here we have some arguments where we believe that we can, or we will make the difference. First of all, if you create a company, it's about the people. You need to have the right people with the right know-how, with the right spirit. And we have set up a team which has done it before, with small launcher experience, who have successfully implemented low-cost launching. So these people also know how it works, but they also know how things can improve. So here we really believe we have the right people on board with the right spirit. Secondly, there are many ideas, and also as said before, almost any university professor can have a nice PowerPoint slide with a concept for a small launcher. At the end of the day, the company will be successful who implements, who delivers on promises and on price targets. And here we have established partnerships on board. On one side, combining new space approaches, and I completely agree. If you want to innovate, make things faster and cheaper, you need to take risk. So we have people with new ideas, but we also have people on board, and we have partners on board who have done things before, who have industrialized before, and who know what can happen, what cannot happen. So the best of both worlds, this is where we believe we have a very good mix. Thirdly, extremely important, you need to understand where the market is going. You need to understand where is this famous sweet spot, where is the customer actually going to. And here we have the advantage that with OHB we have a very good in-house understanding and access to market. And also, let's be clear, a potential in-house customer who, after initial assessment, there are some satellites, up to 90 satellites in 2025, which could be used for an internal customer, which is very important to have a baseline for your business case. And last but not least, and this is the question on the investment, we have investors with a clear strategic view to achieve access to space in a new way. So the team can really concentrate on getting the job done, and we don't need to run every 2 months to find new money and do other presentations. So the team is focused on getting the job done and delivering. And if we speak about timeline, every company needs to have a timeline. Our objective is launch in 2021. The company was founded in August last year. We have entered into the hardware phase, and if you come to Le Bourget, there are some 3D printed parts of our turbo pump, which is also at the Siebel at Le Bourget. So you see, from the creation of the company, we make very good progress. We are in line with our objectives so far, and we are very motivated to stick to this.
Okay, thank you. Time is running, and we need to take some questions from the audience.
Thanks. Peter DeSelding, Space Intel Report. First for David Henri, you were recently selected among 2 other propulsion providers. That's 3 of you on the GOMX-5 mission for ESA. So ESA is a nice customer to have in your reference for your investors and future investors. But the way you describe your mission, can you do that on this mission at GOMX-5? Because you'll have 2 other competitors on the same thing fighting to do their missions as well. I mean, how much can you prove of what you're doing alone, and how much of it you'll have to use the GOMX managers will have to use the 2 other propulsion providers? In other words, how much validation will you get from that mission? And for Benoit, just to kick the tires here, so far as you can tell from India, the PSLV launch is still holding for December?
So, we are working with Spaceflight. We are an update next week on that.
Okay.
But we don't have any official information yet.
Fair enough. And for Ulrich, David answered the first question, but questions for you, obviously, where are you launching from? Are you launching from from Portugal, Portuguese territory? Do you have licenses in place for that? And on financing, we know something about Aerospace Lab and Exotrail. What can you tell us about your financing? Launching satellites is a heavy load in terms of CapEx.
So where are we going to launch from? We are, and this is public information, we are one of the contenders for the spaceport on the Azores, but we are also speaking with other launch sites, and we will take our decision based on the best economic benefit that we get for our business case. We know.
Thank you. So GOMX-5. So first, the mission itself is not. So the ESA has funded the first part for GOMSpace, and the second phase still needs to be funded. So that's just an introduction. So GOMX-5 is 2 satellites. One of it will embark another electric propulsion technology, so trust me, and we will be on the second one. And then the third one is GOMSpace cold gas. And so for us, we are very kind of complementary with cold gas. So we've been in touch with Nanospace, for instance, the company bought by GOMSpace that designs the cold gas systems for a while. For us, it is propulsion, but not to do the same thing. So the second one will be the cold gas. The good thing is you have a really quick response, so to avoid collisions, for instance, can be good. It can be used for 3, 4, 6 degrees of freedom operation. That we can do. But then the amount of impulse of energy that you put in a given volume is 30 times lower. So you cannot change altitude by an order of magnitude that will change your performances. You can change the plane, so you can't do secondary post-launch maneuvers. So it's really not to do the same thing in my and their opinion. And so on that there is no problem, and there could be also opportunities to see if some of the systems could be combined, because we both need to store propellant, for instance. And then versus the other electric propulsion system, for me, again, it's compared to them, there are a lot of differences that mean something for the mission. In the GOMX-5 mission, I can't really say what is the concept of operation, but it's to do a maneuver that needs a lot of delta V. And then it's always the same thing, is we could be able to do that mission for a third of a fourth of the duration that the other propulsion system would require.
You can validate your technology on that mission such as the mission profile is known today?
Yes, so the idea is to validate the mission. And also the system is, we developed two thrusters. We have a very modular product strategy. We develop a modular subsystem, fluidics, electronics thruster, that are compatible with each other. And the end, the part that produces the thrust is the thruster. And we design a 50-watt thruster and a 150-watt thruster. And they target different markets. The first one is more for 6, 12, 15 units chipset. The second one is more in the 20 to 50, 100 kilogram region. And this mission, the idea is to fly the larger one. So it's different from the demonstration that we'll do this year. Yeah. Non, c'est bon, pardon.
Okay, is there any room for a very short question with a very short answer?
We know the figures what Rocket Lab has used for the development. We have a very good understanding what Falcon 1 has cost. So we will be in a similar range, but we hope to do it a little bit cheaper.
Those are two developments separated by more than a decade, so.
Yes.
Well, this will be the word of the end because, well, time is running. I propose that to thank all our panelists and thank you very much.